And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We are talking the F1 Singapore Grand Prix preview. Yes, the championship is very much hotting up now. Why? Well, we thought it was going to be a McLaren 2-horse race. It may well still be a McLaren 2-horse race, which means this race is going to be so important, I believe, in clarifying whether a certain third party, or at least we thought of as a third party in the championship come just after the summer break, Max Verstappen. Is his championship reign reignited? Well, this weekend is going to be absolutely key to that. So welcome. Previously in Formula 1, I don't know if you can see, this is Baku. It says here, Piastri's favourite corner. And if you look, Piastri's very much relaxing there. Yeah, is Piastri going to get back in the game? We'll have our drivers' predictions in a bit. But until then, let's have a look at the current Formula 1 driver standing with Piastri on 234 points. Lando Norris second and 226. It may seem a long way off. Verstappen 165 points. Massive gap. Could it be done? Well, there's a first time for everything. And it's gaps like that have kind of been done before. Big gaps. Fourth is Russell. Fifth is Leclerc. Sixth is Hamilton. Seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th is Kimi Antonelli, Alex Albon, Nico Hülkenberg, and Esteban Ocon. When we look at the constructors, yes, McLaren likely to win it here. 617 points to 280 of Ferrari. Mercedes sadly on 260. Red Bull on 239 in fourth. Williams in fifth. And then we've got the rest are Aston Martin in sixth, and then Racing Bulls, Kick Sauber, Haas, Alpine, that's 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th. And here are the points differences between all of them, which I think is quite good. If you want to zoom in, I mean, McLaren are leading by 333 points. Then by Mercedes. Mercedes are leading Ferrari only by 4 points, 290 to 286, which is interesting. And 14 points behind Ferrari are Red Bull. Thanks to Max Verstappen, no thanks to their second driver. They need to sort that out, do they? They really need to sort that out. So yeah, they're just 14 points on 272. Then you've got to go back 171 points to look at Williams. Wow. And then they're only 29 points ahead of Racing Bulls. Can Racing Bulls catch them? I think it's going to be unlikely, but you never know. Then we've got Aston Martin on 10 points behind Racing Bulls on 62, and this is where it gets quite spicy. When you look at Racing Bulls, Aston Martin, Kick Sauber, and Haas, they are on 561. Sorry, no, not 561. That's the difference between them and McLaren. I do apologise. They are on Racing Bulls on 72, Aston Martin on 62. Then we have Kick Sauber on 55, Haas on 44. Yeah, can most certainly change come the end of the year. Now, in terms of points since the summer break, and I think this is key in relation to whether Max Verstappen can close that gap and potentially win what is going to be a 5th world title. Verstappen. So, he's had 68 points since the summer break. So he leads after the summer break in terms of points gained. Second is Oscar Piastri on 40. Third is George Russell on 40. And fourth is Norris on 24 points. These are all gained since the summer break. And that is a massive difference. If you look at Norris and Verstappen, that is quite big. And if you look at the differences between them in the championship, I mean, 324 points to 299 points. That's basically a win now that Norris has between him and Piastri. So that's not too bad. And then 255 points. In short, 69 points behind Oscar Piastri. Can it be done? Yes. We've done a video saying how it could be done. Piastri's already had a DNF. Max Verstappen has already had that win. He was kind of relying on that. So is it in Max Verstappen's hands? It's sort of whether you can rely on Max Verstappen winning every race between now and the end of the season. Massive question mark. Why? Well, potentially. You could argue he's very much good enough. But anyone thinking, oh my gosh, that Red Bull, Max is dragging that. No, he's not dragging that Red Bull. That Red Bull is a good car. We forget that. And that's something that McLaren have been really pained at point to say that Red Bull in the hands of Max Verstappen is very good. How do we know that? Well, Max wasn't winning races throughout the middle of the year simply because that, since the car was not good enough. But when that car's good enough with Max's skill, we then potentially have a third person in this Drivers' World Championship. Now, the reason why the Singapore Grand Prix is going to be an absolutely massive, gargantuan test for the Red Bull team and Max Verstappen. When you had Baku and when you had Monza, they're two very different circuits. They are kind of like very low wing, very fast circuits with long straights, stuff the Red Bull likes, and funnily enough, that McLaren doesn't like. We go to Singapore, which is like a faster version of Monaco. McLaren likes that. Red Bull maybe not so much, but Red Bull have had upgrades. So, if Max Verstappen can be up there with McLaren, not necessarily maybe beating them, maybe splitting them, maybe Norris wins, which would be good for Max. Max is second, Piastri third potentially. I think there's a chance he's still in this championship. Just so, in relation to what times and when, well, press conference Thursday the 2nd of October. This is Sky F1 times. Drivers press conference at 12. But the important thing is that the practice sessions, and the first one is at 10 a.m. on Friday and 1:45. That's practice 2, starting at 2 o'clock and 10:30, respectively. Saturday, we've got qualifying. Session starts at 2 o'clock. That's Grand Prix qualifying, but if you want to catch the practice before, it's at 10:30 UK time, plus minus an hour if you're obviously listening in Europe. Australia and America, I'm not quite sure. I'm not that good at maths from the top of my head. Sunday, October the 5th, lights out 1 o'clock. And then we have, obviously, the return of Ted's Notebook, etc. Fantastic stuff. Good stuff. So, moving on then, let's look at the weather. And on Friday, there is a chance of rain. Not much. We're looking at, what? 10, 20, 30%. And yeah, it's very little. Saturday, is there a chance? I mean, there's a chance of rain on all days. At the moment, it's not looking very, very likely, I don't think, even on Sunday, to rain, which I think is good. Like the most it gets is like 40%, but that's at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I struggle to see over the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday whether it's going to rain or not. However, 30, 40, 20, 10%, 5%, it's still a chance, isn't it? You still have a chance of raining. So I think people are going to be keeping their fingers crossed. If you want a rain dance, do so. That may well help Max Verstappen. Having said that, the McLaren and Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris are also very good in the wet. So I don't think Max Verstappen will be walking away from that fight, and anything could go wrong in the wet. The odd safety car, just a trip into the barriers, anyone on the grid, yes, and that includes you, Max, are capable of having a whoops-a-daisy. There were times when we thought Oscar Piastri is never going to make a big mistake, and look what happened. I mean, look what happened in Baku. So moving on from that, we're going to be now looking at the track. We'll most certainly have our track guide, so to speak. And in relation to the track guide, Singapore, it has gone through a few changes. It was, interestingly, the first ever Formula 1 night race, which I think is absolutely amazing. And it was in 2008, and a certain Fernando Alonso won. And what's interesting about this is it's changed since its initial inauguration. We don't have the Singapore Sling anymore, which was a right-left chicane that Kimi Raikkonen particularly didn't like. He T-boned into the wall one year. But the biggest change from in 2023 up until now is here, 14 and 15. There used to be a couple of corners in there, and now we just go 14, 15 through the chicane, 16, 17, which we didn't do before. Well, we did before, but there was a lot going on between 14, 15 and 16 beforehand. There were more corners, and then obviously we prepare for the final corner, which is really, really fast. Could you get it flat in the game? Yeah, possibly. With the amount of downforce that you need, it is quite high levels of downforce, even in spite of the fact that, as you can see on the map, there are a fair few straights. So let's then get into the lap, our hot lap for the Singapore Grand Prix. If you just bear with me here, track guide. Track map video though. Here we go. Here it is, the map again. So yeah, obviously, as with all things, 3 sectors. We have a couple of DRS zones, 3 DRS zones in total, and there's a fair few corners, 19 corners, in total as well. We'll get into how long the race is, etc. in a bit. So, the track guide as we begin now. This was done on time trial on F1 2025, but this was done in the dry. In the daytime, this circuit does look a bit weird. So as we're now going through, we're going through turns 1, 2, and 3. You need to be smooth here. Codemasters on this game are absolutely savage with corner cuts and lap time deletions, which I fully expect again, potentially in the race. Now, this is going to be a really important corner here. As we come down to, I believe it's turn 5, which we've just done. DRS, full mode. Can you pass here? Yes. We get passes on the inside and the outside. But the thing you've got to watch here, as we're going into turn 7, as you can see on the right of the screen there, the bit there, yeah, don't go wide. And you want to take this nice and calm now as we're coming through turns onto another. You know, let's be fair, this is a fairly reasonable straight, isn't it? Into a hard braking. Now it gets really, really Mickey Mouse as we're going right, left, into essentially what's going to be another DRS zone. As we come here, this corner here, absolutely punt it out of the corner in the second DRS zone into turns 14 and 50. They do come quicker than you probably like. Nicely done here. It's easy to move too far there and get a track delete. I don't know why Codemasters sort it out though. And to what is ultimately another DRS zone as we go into turns 16 and 17. We didn't really see an amazing amount of passing here since the 23 changes, but still, I think it helped with the circuit flow. Now, into the final 2 corners, yes, you can pass into that first corner. It is a relatively short straight though, so you've got to be right behind them on the turbo, or on the ERS, on the DRS, and absolutely savage them going onto the inside. So let's talk about the circuit a bit then, shall we? This is Singapore. It is the first Grand Prix, as I mentioned, was 2008, won controversially by Fernando Alonso. The track length is 4.940 kilometers. Lap record, I believe, currently, I think, could be Lewis Hamilton on a 1 minute 35.867. I'm not sure if that changed last year though. But most pole positions, we're looking at Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton. Most wins, 5. By Vettel. In terms of the poles, it was 4 that both Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel shared. Now, due to the physical demands of the climate and the circuit, drivers can lose as much as, get this weight watchers, 3 kilograms in body weight over the course of a race in Singapore. Pole to the turn 1 braking point, interestingly, is 178 meters. Not amazing amount, but enough to make a difference. Now, overtakes completed all the way back in 2023. Yes, you can overtake it. 85, believe it or not. There is so far a 100% safety car probability. Can we change as you see that massive lockup? Maybe. The pit loss time, we could be looking at maybe a 1 or 2 stop. We'll see, but it is a 29.02 seconds. So remember, it is quite lengthy. And that's from the last 6 races in Singapore, like a rough, let's say, guesstimate. Now, Mr. Palmer's come out and said Marina Bay, it's a long, complex circuit, draining as well, a little bit like Monaco with plenty of bumps. It's all about the low speed and having decent turning without losing the rare or suffering snaps of oversteer. And I want to just take one more look at our track guidance. So, you need to nail the corner here. Absolutely hoon it down there. Don't go too wide. You can pass. There is plenty of room to the left, and if you even need to go to the middle, you can pass on the outside as you come into this corner. But we do see on lap 1 a lot of let's just say Robbins racing, etc. And people, as you can see to the right, to the right of you there, people go off and then they just carry on down. And once again here, people bumping around. It is quite a chaotic first couple of corners. Now, this is normally the first chance of any overtaking. As we slide it into here, you need a decent exit. You want almost to be a bit slow going in and absolutely punch it going out. Controlled going in. What you don't want to do, as I'm taking a drink, is absolutely lose it coming out of here. And then lose all that potential time you've got then with the DRS, your energy recovery system on full power. You can pass down here. But as I mentioned, as we're slowing down, and as you can see to the right of you, just above where the hot lap sign is, you can see the curb. We have seen passes on the outside here, and obviously they don't count. And if all 4 of your wheels are outside of this, sadly, the lap will very much not count either, which is going to be a massive bummer. Now we get into a Martin Milton's Mickey Mouse bit, like where the middle of the circuit is very much tight, twisty corners, slow to medium speed. Well, we got a fairly decent straight down here, which here we used to have the Singapore Sling, the one where Kimi Räikkönen long darted it in. Used to be some weird, horrible chicane, but now we just pump it, go all the way through into the right hand and then the left hand. Now we need to get ready. This bit now is flat up until the braking point here. You'll see a lot of people getting it wrong here, snatching a brake as we did on the tyres. This is really important now. Now they're normally you can go alongside it, and there's always two racing lines if you're racing someone. There's the tight line and the wide line. We pretty much take neither of them. And yes, we have seen overtakes here quite often on the outside, because people will end up covering on the inside going into the next turn here, which once again is super important. Why? Because it takes us into the third and final DRS zone going into the chicane towards the end of the lap. And as I mentioned, from the top of my head, didn't see too many overtakes on this particular section, but there we go. And once again, those final corners, make it count. Absolutely make it count. So that's our track guide for the Singapore Grand Prix. A race that's normally one of the longest of the year, really. Not quite, but nearly the full 2 hours, like Monaco, with its 3 DRS zones. And yeah, we wish anyone a good luck. So let's talk about predictions now. Let's talk about the drivers and whether we think they're going to be doing good. So, who's going to finish last? Well, I don't want to say that, but we're going by whose performances we think are going to be the best. And sadly, Lance Stroll. The reason why I say that he didn't do it's a street circuit. Yes, he's good at Baku. What I hope to be proven wrong here is that the Aston Martin is a quick car here. I'm hoping, with all my fingers crossed, that the Aston Martin is quick, and he absolutely proves me wrong, and Alonso's up there as well. Doesn't have all the straights, for example, like Baku had, so I think they've got a chance to be fairly decent and get some points, but we can't forget it's Lance Stroll. Another man under pressure. There are now rumours that maybe Doohan has been given a lifeline. Franco Colapinto, potentially the least likely person to go into Alpine, but when you have colourful people, let's say like Flavio Briatore in charge, never say never. You can get this year, but he needs a really, really decent race. Is he going to get one? I don't think so. Once again, I put Gasly at the back. We don't really know what Alpine are going to do. They're so inconsistent, albeit they've been consistently not particularly very good, at least for the last few races in terms of the pace, which is why they're all at the back. Another guy that I think needs a bit of a kick up the backside, so to speak. He's been beaten by Bortoleto more often than not since his podium at Silverstone. And once again, his experience may come in, but I think this Bortoleto guy is not, I don't think he's too bad. Again, Ocon, I think, is going to struggle. He's been struggling all this year, along with Ollie Behrman. I think the Haas people may struggle a bit. Ollie Behrman still with that, please don't hit anyone or get a penalty point. That would really upset me. Ollie Behrman. I think Bortoleto will end up doing quite good as well. I think he ultimately may well show off Nico Hülkenberg. The only thing going against Bortoleto for doing this, as I mentioned previously, is going to be his experience, as in lack of experience in an F1 car around Singapore, where Hülkenberg, let's be fair, he very much is, isn't he? That's going against him. So let's look at then the Yuki Tsunoda. He had a decent time last time out, but, people struggled. McLaren struggled. Piastri yeeted it into a wall. There were other things that did help him, but he was showing some promise. But if you believe the rumours, he's already gone from Red Bull, so what's the point? I don't think so. I still think he can do good. He's a lot closer to Max, as he was. But, like Colapinto, like many people at the moment, there are still a few seats, as we know, that have not been confirmed. And boy, oh boy, does Yuki Tsunoda need to show something. I think he will score points. I just don't think he'll be up there, with all the others. Potential to score points, anyway. Now, the podium man from Baku. Really, really skilled. I had a few conversations with some of my friends. They said, well, he was a bit lucky. Sort of. but he still had to do the lap. He was the one to do the lap. It was qualifying that helped confirm his podium. And he was still keeping Max honest. So, was he a bit lucky? Well, excuse me, he just did all the right moves at the right time. Where the others didn't. Basically, he got a lap in to help him get on the front row. So, yeah, but still, he absolutely earned that podium hands down. It was the best result. He was the man of the race, I think, you know. Alexander Albon, I think he got absolutely humbled by Carlos Sainz, but humbled by himself in Baku. It was amateur hour with Alex Albon. And I think here in Singapore, I don't think the Williams will be as strong as it was in other circuits. Excuse me. But I think he'll do okay. I think he'll be okay. I think he'll beat Sainz. Next up, Liam Lawson, the man that punted in 2023, Max Verstappen outside the top 10. He knows his circuit. He'll do well here. I don't think he'll do as well as Hadjar, simply because I don't think Liam Lawson is currently as promising, choosing my words careful, as Hadjar, given the evidence. But what a weekend he had in Baku, and I think that will do absolutely fantastic things for his confidence. So although I don't think he'll beat Hadjar, I wouldn't be surprised if he does. But, you know, I've got to make a choice. I think Alonso, as I mentioned, I do feel that the Aston Martin is going to be quite fast. I do think the Aston Martin is going to be very promising in Singapore. Simply because it's not a fast circuit like Baku and Monza, where I don't think played to the strength of what was quite a draggy car, but it's got a decent amount of grip. So I think he'll do well. Next up, we got Isaac Hadjar. I mean, as you can see, these are going in order of how good we think these people are going to do, hence Lance Stroll, Colapinto at the back. At the bottom, I think this man, still Rookie of the Year, I think he'll do quite well. I really do. At least I'm hoping he does. And if he shows up at Liam Lawson on a track where Liam Lawson has more experience, at least one Grand Prix more experience, because if you remember last year, this was Danny Ricciardo's last race, which Red Bull absolutely did horrendously, or you know, Toro Rosso, or V-Carb, whatever you want to call them. Yeah, we made a video out of that, and hey, it was horrendous how they treated Danny Ricciardo. But anyway, I digress. Isaac Hadjar, I think, will do really well here. And then I also think this guy wouldn't be too bad at Kimi Antonelli, but it is barriers. He did ultimately he did quite well in Baku. But I can't help but feel this place has got even less runoff at times than Baku did. If you make a mistake here, it's going to bite more. And Kimi Antonelli is still, this season, the last few races, albeit the last one was good, still making mistakes. Do I want him to make mistakes? No. Do I want him to do well? Yes. Will he do well? I'm not so sure, which is why he's a kind of like in the middle of, our predictions. Can he get points? Yes. As long as he has an incident-free qualifying and an incident-free race, he'll be in the points. It's just where. And I think he'll be the bottom part of the points. I hope I'm wrong. But there we go. So next up is Charles Leclerc. Yes, he's just a bit behind Hamilton. I'll tell you my reasons why in a second. But I think the Ferrari... Now, the Ferrari could do really well here. They could be in the mix. I mean, they were in the mix in Baku. Then qualifying happened and both of them absolutely failed. Leclerc was like, everything you can do, I can do better than you with some of the drivers, and he yeeted it into the wall. Lewis Hamilton, well, he was handicapped by the absolute ineptitude on the Ferrari pit wall, let's be honest, in terms of the tyres. Will it happen here? Hopefully not. Traffic is going to be an issue here in qualifying, but where you qualify is going to be really important, because I think out of all the races, I think 10 times the pole sitter has won, which might be a bit depressing for some, but yeah. So Lewis Hamilton is up next, because I think the two Ferrari guys are going to be so close. Hamilton may well have the edge. I know at the time of recording this, he's obviously missed the Pirelli test because of his poor dog Roscoe. I'm not sure where, how obviously Roscoe is doing. So mentally, he might be a bit distracted going on. It might make him focus. If you remember, another big loss to Lewis Hamilton was in 2019 when Niki Lauda passed. He went to Monaco and won the race on tyres he probably really shouldn't have done. And Max Verstappen was hunting him down most of the way. And it was an incredible victory. One that we really should not forget. It was amazing. One of those where a driver made the difference. Yes, it's Monaco. You can't pass to Monaco. But even more so than Danny Ricciardo's lack of, let's say, straight line speed. Hamilton had a lack of grip, which I think is a lot worse than the lack of straight line speed at Monaco. But, you know, for Hamilton fans, Verstappen couldn't get by. But I think Hamilton will do okay. I think he'll be in the upper echelon of the points. Will he get a podium? Potentially. Unlikely, I think. I think he needs something to happen to the people ahead of him to get a podium, and that, well, the first person ahead of him is going to be this man, George Russell, who has been setting the world light this year. At Baku, he was really, really ill. He still got a podium. And what I thought was interesting, when George went into second place, when you looked at the gap between him and Verstappen, it wasn't exactly getting that large. So it would have been interesting to see George Russell on the front row. Whilst I appreciate this, it's a very different circuit. If they can get the car set up right with the Mercedes, George Russell will deliver and is one of the favourites for the podium. Another favourite for the podium is Max Verstappen. Now, I did mention this is going to be, up until now, I think this is the most important weekend for Max Verstappen in terms of his pace. If he's up there with McLaren, the championship is on. If McLaren destroy him, remember, he finished quite far back at his home race. Yes, I know he was helped by Lando Norris. Lando Norris's engine going up, going no more. But if his qualifying pace and his race pace are on par with McLaren, or even better, you never know, championship is very much on, which is why this weekend is going to be so important for Max Verstappen's championship and McLaren's, but more so Max Verstappen's Drivers' Championship. And with the two McLaren boys, I think, put a cigarette paper. Lando Norris comes from what was a very underwhelming Baku weekend qualifying. Nope, just couldn't get it sorted in the race. No, under the safety car, he was asleep. He let Charles Leclerc by, which again really impacted on him. Yes, I know the McLaren pit crew, but for the second race, I think, in a row, absolutely messed up on Lando's stop, which didn't really help Lando at all. But I think, yeah, he's a fight. Could he win it? Absolutely. But he's going to have to beat this guy. And then this guy, Oscar Piastri, is coming off quite, well, the worst weekend he's had, I think, in Formula One. Binned it in qualifying, binned it in the race. What more do you want? I mean, that's the worst performance of the year by a top-line driver, in my opinion. But he's also one of the most, we believe, mentally tough drivers. There are question marks around him now, though, and I think it's going to be fascinating, and I think he'll bounce back really well. But I think it's going to be fascinating to see how Oscar Piastri does indeed bounce back. I do think he's favourite just from Lando Norris and just from Max Verstappen. But my preface on this just is he's going to, like Kimi Antonelli, need a clean weekend, get everything right, don't make a mistake, and he's going, I think he'll have the pace to win. I think mentally he's going to be like, I want to prove everyone right. Where I do feel there's more question marks in spite of Oscar's silly mistake. I still think mentally there's more question marks about Lando Norris. Both drivers can still win the championship. Both drivers, Lando Norris doesn't have to rely on any silly things happening. He just needs to beat Piastri a lot more than Piastri beats him in the coming weekend. But they have a Max Verstappen shaped shadow catching them. Will that be halted this weekend? And therein lies the massive question, which is why I think Max Verstappen definitely favourite for the podium, but it's going to be the pace. That pace is going to be the big question mark, and we'll see it maybe in Friday practice 1 and 2, but we won't ultimately see it until qualifying. And then the race pace data, the race pace data even. It's going to be really, really interesting, isn't it? But there we go. Podium, Piastri, Norris, Verstappen is what we're predicting. Wouldn't be surprised if it's any different. But this is Singapore, and if you're Fernando Alonso, you can win from 15th if you get a bit of a hand from the safety car. So who knows? That was all the way back though in 2008. So there we go. That is our Singapore Grand Prix preview, and I just even looking at those driver standings and the gap. I mean, it's going to be I can't wait. F1 points since the summer break. So, who do you think is going to win? Comment below, let us know. But until then, we'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much for watching. If you made it to the end, absolutely amazing. Please give us a subscribe. That would give us a massive smile. But until then, thank you. Thanks for watching again. I do it too much to say thank you, but it does. I mean, the fact that people just pick this up and watch this ramble on Formula One Singapore is more than enough for us. Thank you very much. But above all else, stay safe.